Europa stoi przed wyzwaniami jak
Europe is facing challenges like never before. It has to urgently address the issue of its competitiveness. High costs of energy are an enormous burden for European companies and consumers. Strategic industries are facing difficulties. Europe has to urgently bolster its security. Physical, cyber, and economic threats are on the rise.
stare założenia dotyczące tego,
The
kto powinien się
old
zająć. Energia wiatrowa
thoughts about who has to address them have also changed. Wind power has to play a key role in all of this for Europe's competitiveness. Wind is cheaper than fossil fuels, even when grid and system costs are taken into account. Wind power means lower electricity bills for consumers and industries. Energy-intensive industries understand that. They want more wind to help with electrification. We need to do whatever we can to support each other. More wind means more security.
energia lokalna,
It is local energy, thus increasing the security and resilience of Europe. It is also a developing European industry, creating new jobs and attracting investment to local communities. More wind means
bardziej konkurencyjna.
a safer and more competitive Europe.
Witam wszystkich Państwa na
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 20th PWA conference. Welcome to the main session devoted to driving the transformation. Important decisions, big wins, and Poland on its path to transition and a strong position in Europe. Janusz Gajowiecki, the president of the Polish Wind Energy Association, will tell you more about that. The floor is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, second day of important discussions. We have signed the Świnoujście Declaration. It was signed yesterday by politicians, ministers, and members of parliament. A very important declaration about shortening the permitting process and industrial policy for our industries. And thirdly, clear regulations and schedules. Today we are talking in a broader sense from the point of view of the whole of Europe. So let me give the floor to our main guest, special guest for day 2 of the conference, Mr. Jerzy Buzek, former Prime Minister of Poland. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I haven't tried to run up the stairs like you did, due to my dignity rather than physical incapacity. I am very thankful to all of you for having me here. Have you all survived until 5 a.m. or have you left the party earlier? Well, I hear people laughing, which means that you all stayed until 5 a.m. I asked the panelists, and it turns out that they left the party a bit earlier. But my sore throat is for some other reason rather than yesterday's party. We have been given some pills, but apologies for my sore throat. First of all, my apologies for not being here yesterday, because yesterday you had the introductory sessions, but it is a 20th conference. It is the 20th conference. I would like to congratulate you on not just this event, but also the fact that you have not only theoretical discussions, but purely business discussions, which is superb, and congratulations on that. 200 years ago, I think that a similar boom, like the one that you have here, back then there was no possibility to display the videos like the one we saw a moment ago, showing how it is all being driven. But a similar boom happened in Silesia 200 years ago. They dug for coal. We can't even imagine what it was like back then. Villages turned into cities and towns, and today we are in the north of Poland especially, which is where nuclear power will be located and offshore wind will be located, but also the best onshore, because this is where the best conditions are, although Greater Poland and other Polish regions also have a lot of wind turbines. But you are in the midst of an enormous revolutionary boom for our industrial civilization. We are all deep down into the industrial civilization, but now we have to save it for humans, for humankind, so that it is not a civilization that ends the activity of humankind on our planet. The planet will survive without us much better than with us. That's beyond doubt, because we are very harmful to the planet in many ways. And you are here to have this boom and not to harm the planet. We have great conditions here. The situation is difficult. Our goal is transformation and transition. Let me just remind you, it's not about the Green Deal anymore, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. It's there 100%. We have the climate law, which absolutely was adopted unanimously by the Prime Ministers and the European Parliament. It is still in force. Nothing has changed, apart from the general idea and what we think about in terms of message to the general public. The message to the general public has to showcase developing and competitive economy in all its aspects. And our security, which is the main topic of our presidency, we need to feel secure. Militarily, we need to have civil defense. We need to feel safe and secure in terms of health. Obviously, the advances in medicine are incredible. We need to be secure in terms of food supply. We need to feel digitally secure and economically safe and secure, because there's nothing without good economy. And on top of all that is energy, because there is no energy, no food, no economy, no health, no defense without energy and the energy sector. So you are our jewel in the crown. And it is the 20th conference, the 20th opportunity for such discussions. The Green Deal has been replaced with Net Zero Industry Act. That was back then when I was a member of the European Parliament. It was adopted back then. Now we have first we had Omnibus. The results of the Draghi's and Letters report was the Omnibus. We need to take care of competitive economy, full stop. Nothing more, nothing less. And this is also included and expressed in solutions for clean energy, simplifications of all kinds. This was mentioned by the President a moment ago, streamlining the permitting process. Quite recently, in the last couple of years, we had the pandemic, we had the start of the war in Ukraine, which is still going on. We had the energy crunch. We had rising tensions in our relationships with the US. These are enormous and important problems. So reducing our strategic resilience is a result of all those four principal things that we are talking about. Both our tensions with Russia or difficulties in mutual understanding with the US, closing down the borders during the COVID pandemic. We know that we need to have strategic resilience and we need to be as much independent as possible of what is happening outside. And the economy is aimed, should serve the well-being of people. Well-being is its definition. It is by definition the main purpose and the main assumption of economic activities. And if it is so, then the economy today, just like 3,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, it relies on humans' ideas, that is new technologies and innovation. Because if someone came up with an idea that you can use fire to warm up, rather than run away from burning jungle, or someone has invented the wheel or the steam machine, raw materials that allowed these ideas to be implemented, and then geopolitics, where we are. These are the three things that rule the economy, and we need to remember all that when developing wind power. We have the ideas. Let's not allow the Chinese to overtake us in many areas. They are capable of doing that, but we also need to take care of having the resources to build all that. We know that rare earth metals, fortunately for your industry, they are required more in the PV sector rather than the wind sector, but they are a key way to achieve independence. Let's also remember that in case of energy storage and batteries, obviously these rare earth metals are of key importance. In a certain sense, the rare earths are replacing oil, gas, and coal. In the past, there was nothing, there was no development without one of those three things. Europe doesn't have them. We do have some coal, but it's of poor quality and expensive, and it is very dangerous for other reasons. And we do not have gas and oil. These are all factors that you need to use as the representatives of the wind energy sector to convince the politicians, the decision makers, to what we do. And we have to do it, and you are doing that, and congratulations on that. We need to talk about that 24/7. And the European Union is trying to help us. We call all this that is happening around green energy and green economy in a different way. We call it the Net Zero Industry Act, Clean Industrial Deal, Omnibus, whatever. But it is all about the same thing, about being competitive while protecting the environment and the climate. We do not have oil and gas, I've mentioned that, so we have no other way. We need to address this. And the Polish presidency and the Council of the European Union is putting a lot of emphasis on that. Europe spends 2.4% of its GDP on fossil fuels from elsewhere in the world. If we move away from Russian fuels, it doesn't mean that we should buy them somewhere else. Those that we buy them from might be a bit better. They have better faces than Mr. Putin's face, but we pay 2.4% of European GDP for that. That's a huge amount. So the only way out, if the European Union spends 1.4% of GDP, it is absurd. We pay money to Mr. Putin. He has a lot of money. And let's clarify it, let's showcase it in the media. We are fueling the war by paying money to Mr. Putin. Maybe there will be an opportunity to talk about the prospects of the European Union, but that will be during the panel. So we have the slogan of Europe's security in 7 dimensions. energy is on top of all of them, because we will not be able to use our military equipment, we will not be able to do anything with our economy if we don't have the energy. So it is our task to not just count on good winds, on favorable winds, because winds are not favorable anymore in terms of geopolitics. We should use favorable winds in the sense of wind power. Just like that. So if we have good, well-developed renewables, including and particularly wind farms, it will be a guarantee for a safe, economically developed and well-protected Europe, both with regard to military security and economic security. So let's drive a smart and responsible transition rather than silly opposition against the transformation. I'm sorry for using the title of the next panel because I'm trying to encourage you to push for that, to generate this drive. It is up to us, and we should shake hands with the PV sector. Let's not compete with them in any special way, although we have the right to compete because we do the same as they do. But we need to have political unity in our country with regard to the shift to renewables. That's the only thing I encourage you to do. Thank you very much. Please stay on the stage, and we have a surprise for you. We have the 20th conference of our association. Please stay with us. The 20th conference of PWA. We present the awards every year, but it is a special award for 20 years of leading us towards a safer Europe, for the art of diplomacy and dialogue, and for showing us how we can develop our country, how to be a patriot, but also think on a European level. The personality of the year of the Polish Wind Energy Association, Prime Minister Jerzy Buzek.
We've been awarding this for a number of years, but never with such joy. Never have we done it. I mean, this is not enough. This statute is not enough. The Prime Minister has done the greatest things possible for the whole energy sector across Europe. He's with us today. This is a huge honor for all of us. We know that it was not easy to get here, so we do appreciate that. In all the meetings in the European Parliament, he was so busy, and he always found the time for the wind energy to listen to us, to work with us. So unforgettable moments, really. And thanks to we've managed to push the whole industry forward. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, so many things are written about me. Some people write that I was educated as a chemist because somebody said that by accident on the first day when they discovered me, so to speak. I'm a person from the energy sector at heart. So this is my background. So please make sure that you disseminate this knowledge. Please take a seat. We're about to kick off the panel moderated by Janusz Gojowiecki and Anna Nosalska, a reporter from the Polsat television station. And apart from Prime Minister Jerzy Buzek, on the panel we'll have Grzegorz Lot, President of the Board from Tauron Polska Energia, Deputy President of the Board of PSE, Dr. Engineer Konrad Purchała. Please join me on the stage. Piotr Rogusz, Country Manager, ENGIE Poland. Please join me on the stage. Agata Staniewska-Bolesta, Managing Director from Ørsted. and Dominic Shanto, Head of Investment Management, Offshore Wind from Northland Power. Hope you'll have a successful panel. Ladies and gentlemen, very inspiring call for action from Prime Minister. We will never surrender. We are unrelenting. The fact that we are the greatest issue for Putin makes us stay strong, keep fighting without looking what's happening around us. We're doing our job. So this is very inspiring for us that you perceive us as the main obstacle for Russia on the path of Europe to become independent of other energy sources. So your power speech was very important to us. Trust us, we will be doing that. From the very beginning of your speech, you mentioned that energy transition from the very beginning has been a huge challenge to the whole Europe, and especially to Poland, to its historic conditions. Today, there are more and more voices about the need to review the plans in this respect due to high energy prices, issues with competitiveness of the Polish industry. Is this really a dilemma? Doesn't energy transition need long-term lowering of energy costs for European economy? Prime Minister? Thank you so much. For sure, one of the main requirements for competitive Europe and for serving our citizens is to have more affordable energy prices. This is absolutely obvious. Never before have we had enough oil and gas in Europe before. So if you're talking about energy transition and somebody is trying to argue against the whole concept of energy transition, this is the greatest sin against our own country and Europe as a whole, because we have started transitioning too late. The issue is not that we're doing it and it's bad. We should accelerate this process. Ladies and gentlemen, the thing is that Danes started this as far back as in the 80s, and today they are the only country which is fully independent, but obviously they have their own natural gas, some remnants out in the sea. They had so much natural gas, but they said, all right, let's transform, born baby transform. This is the slogan we should follow. This is our European slogan. We will not keep drilling, we will not be drilling, baby. The only thing we can drill apart from coal in Lublin area, we have coal deposit, we have coal as well, coking coal. Without strategic resources, we cannot work. You, as representatives of wind energy sector and heat storage system, heat pumps, are a bit better as far as critical resources are concerned. But it's a bit easier to manufacture them. But as I said, the worst case concerns photovoltaics. But we have to ensure critical resources and good ideas. We have good ideas. I'd like to congratulate all those who have these good ideas. How to develop new technological solutions. I'm from Silesia. I can give an example of a company called Famur, and they want to build our own wind turbine. We have representatives of Famur, and they are displaying their transmission here. I'm just giving a specific example. It's also worth stressing that. And our companies, our industry knows that investors in Poland from abroad are asking about the energy mix. And when they learn about today's energy mix, 50–60% of electricity generated from coal and the domestic energy, just like in Europe, but in Poland, one of the most expensive in Europe, if not the most expensive, and it's really bad. In the US and China, it's a few times more affordable. How can we be competitive economically with such high energy prices? So as soon as possible, we have to get away from that. And when you're asking about such issue, let me add that another Polish company, energy utility from Silesia, Tauron, well, I read about this, like I congratulate the president of the company that this is what they're achieving. By 2035, if I recall correctly, you want to generate many times more of the electricity you're generating now from renewables. At the same time, your current stock price of Tauron is the highest ever, and it's still growing. It's a great achievement. It shows that investors, including people investing in stock, shows that the future lies in the energy sector. So defending green energy and the transition in Poland, if we're thinking about seriously, without saying that our political opponents in renewables have bad intentions. It's the worst cases when the country is split in half, 10 here and 10 there. Without supporting any political sides, we know that each of these 10 millions have their beliefs and convictions. We should try to explain to the other 10 million why we believe what we believe, without ridiculing them in any way, ridiculing those people who voted differently than we did. I'm not telling you how I voted, because on both sides of the political divide, we should follow the same principles. Let's not ridicule our friends, our family members, acquaintances who voted for another person. Let's have a civil conversation with them. I mean, we had a similar situation. You might not know this. You were partying until 5 a.m. I used to party until small hours decades ago, in 1980. Nobody in the room remembers that because you're all very young. So we had solidarity, and there were 10 million people in the solidarity movement. 10 million. And you had an abstract system of values: truth, honesty, democracy, healthy free market economy, based on, at the socialist economics, we were taught a different economy than free market economy. So we eliminated all this, but there were only 10 million of us. And there was a huge wave of communism from Estonia to Albania, from Berlin to Vladivostok, and we were alone here, like an island. In 1980, we were alone. We have our political statements, our political agenda, and we had this huge task ahead of us. I'm telling you all this because we should not be staying in our own bubble of people who think the same. And you don't have to convince anyone. You should not really preach to the choir. I don't have to tell you that wind power is good. You have to convince others. And our 10 million, whichever it is, should talk with the other 10 million strong group and try to persuade them about things that we see as the most important. We have to make a profit to support our defense, and this is a common goal. All 20 million agree that we have to defend internally and externally, and this is obvious. We are on the same page here. If we want to beat our enemies or to feel that we are safe, we need to have an independent energy sector. This is of key importance. This is a sine qua non. We don't want to fuel our enemies with the money they're using to build tanks. We also do not want to pay Saudi Arabia or any other part of the world for oil and gas. So we must be independent. This is a critical challenge. Sorry for returning to this again. I mean, you invited me. I'm not an expert in the energy sector. I don't know as much as you do. We will hear about this from other panelists. I'm discussing things that we should do. We have to be very active. This is the only way to permanently strengthen our nation, our motherland. Yesterday we had an interesting panel with heads of large energy corporations who came to Świnoujście, and they discussed transform, baby, transform. So there's no other way for Europe. So thank you so much, Prime Minister, for your input. Since you mentioned Tauron as a Prime Minister, the question to the next guest, Grzegorz Lot. We know that energy transition is a huge challenge, and these challenges are clearly visible, like they're focused in multi-energy utilities like Tauron, energy generation, heating assets, mining assets, distribution assets, all these areas that require comprehensive action. From the point of view of Tauron's energy transition, is this a burden or an opportunity? Where are you at today? What is the stage of your development? What's your strategy for the future? And the most important thing, how does wind energy becomes a part of it? So, it's an opportunity. First of all, every change is an opportunity. So you have to be optimistic about it. The glass is always half full, and this is our point of view. We have announced our strategy last year. There's a clear message. By 2040, we want to be climate neutral, 10 years before the obligation. 2035, zero coal used for heating. And we've been implementing this consequently. 2 years ago, we have put down the last smokestacks, and we are implementing a modern natural gas system generating heat and electricity. At the same time, electrode boilers, heat storage, and peakers. So we'll show you how it's done. They're not dreams and long-term plans. It's tangible. It's happening now. Some things have to be demolished to be replaced with new things. And what's important, at the center of this mindset, we placed not turbines, not PV, not the grid, but our customers. Because energy transition is not done for its sake, it's done for our customers. Not done for the money, but for our customers that help us achieve profit, obviously, at the end of the day. So we are all supported by specific customers, by paying their bills and invoices. That's why we respect the base of 6 million customers. This is a huge customer base. And on this basis, we have adopted the strategy. We know that these customers want to have secure electricity, green electricity, and affordable electricity. Obviously, we all want that. We have to build a model, an energy mix, and a business model that will, as soon as possible, deliver affordable electricity. We all agree that the generation profile should be connected with the use profile. On the one hand, of our strategy, we mainly have onshore wind. We believe today this is the best and quickest and the most affordable solution, and it matches the profile of our customers very well, and this is an important component for all of us, and we're fully determined to realize these projects. And a business mix, on the one hand, we are developing our own assets, That's a huge component. On the other hand, we are open to long-term collaboration with partners in the form of PPAs, for example. So the aim is to make the electricity green. We want to be the first country in Poland and maybe in Europe where 100% of sold electricity will come from low-emission sources. We're hoping that when nuclear plants come up, we'll have a PPA. When there is offshore wind and it's possible to buy electricity from offshore, we are open to this contracting. If you want to negotiate with us, you're free to sign a PPA with us. On the one hand, there are turbines, on the other hand, there are customers, large investments for our customers. In 10 years, we're planning to spend over 30 billion zlotys. For this to make sense, at the same time, we have to develop our distribution grid. Over 60 billion zlotys are earmarked for that. It doesn't mean that we have to spend it, but with today's demands, it's supposed to be. I was probably covering the antenna. I was told not to. So distribution, as I said. An interesting thing I want to share with you: a new role of heat. Well, heat used to be a standard business. Somebody is generating heat, distributing heat, and radiators are hot. When it's cold, we open up the windows. But heat is gaining a new dimension because hot, usable water for our customers should come from renewables. This is our driver, power-to-heat technology. We're starting investing into heat storage today and heat pumps at the end of the lines. In the summer, 100% of heat delivered to our homes will come from renewables. And this is one of the largest distributed systems of energy storage. Apart from renewables, apart from our customers and the grid, we have to invest in storage. We have an ambitious storage, large-scale plan. At the same time, we are running a project of heat pump storage plant in Rożnowo, over 500 megawatts of power. It's a huge project. What's the time horizon? As soon as possible, but we don't want to do it too fast, so it falls down or falls apart. 15 years? Yes. I mean, these terms are long. We have to deal with all the permitting. So you have to cut a mountain in half, work on it from the top down, and to do something for all of us to generate electricity. So it's a huge challenge. But energy storage will be happen faster. 200 megawatts of capacity. We want these projects. These projects are being implemented. As far as storage is concerned, in 5 years' time, we want to have reach up to 1 gigawatt. So it's happening. Apart from these large-scale storage facilities, there's a huge impact of our customers. 6 million customers. This is a huge potential to deliver electricity at an affordable price. The Prime Minister mentioned we want to have green electricity. All right. We have the whole infrastructure in the form of turbines, storage facilities. Want it secure? Yes, the distribution network is secure. And the customers want to have it affordable. And there's a clash with reality. Everybody wants to have low prices, but transition costs is costly. If we want just to have it affordable only, many of these things wouldn't be doing today. They would be moved to the future. But I assume they want to have it affordable in the long term and sustainable for future generations and safe. So I did not touch the antenna at all. Maybe my time is running out. So I have to put it this way. Customers want to be engaged and involved. We have to explain that you cannot have anything for free. There ain't such thing as a free lunch. If you want to have affordable electricity in the future, you need to take action. So ahead of us, we have dynamic tariffs. We have to be ready to have DSR, to give your meter be controlled by PSE, for example. It's not only about technology, but a huge shift in the mindset of society, involvement of every Pole in this change. If we don't start changing as people, we will not achieve energy transition. To have a perfect body, you have to move more, eat less, and eat good things. It takes effort, energy. We should ask the Prime Minister about his recipe for staying in such a good shape.
I think we should say that transition is costly, but lack of transformation costs 4 times as much. This is the result of calculations. Related to COP summits, they have calculated that our adjustment and adaptation in the future to the dramatic climate and environmental changes that we have caused will cost 4 times as much as the energy transition. It is hard to imagine, but it is going to happen. We will have flooded areas, we will have drought in places that used to be wet, we will have enormous floods in places that used to have drought. Ocean currents are going to change. CH4, methane, will be emitted into the atmosphere, not just CO2. So it will be an irreversible process. So it is something that we should talk about. The President is right that the transition is very costly, but we need to do that to carry out the transition in order to avoid paying 4 times as much. And that bill will be paid by our children and grandchildren. The energy transition, the energy security is mentioned during all events in the energy sector multiple times. But I have a question to PSE, to the Polish TSO, Mr. Prochała. I hope that it was not Mr. Grzegorz Nichimowski who got scared by last year's hot chairs and difficult questions. I am very happy that you are here, Konrad, with us today in the main session. But you will also take part in the later sessions devoted to transmission networks. I know that you have your great experts with you. There was a panel on balancing yesterday. So the cooperation with the Polish TSO, looking at our long-lasting cooperation, this cooperation has been excellent, I have to say. So thank you very much for that. And using your European experience, because I know that you had the opportunity to work in various European bodies, working on cooperation between various TSOs, what about development of the grid and grid connection for renewables? What are the biggest challenges from the point of view of costs? Because we need to invest, we know that we have to, because otherwise the costs will be 4 times as high. But how to do it, how to combine it with the interests of end users, because you need to submit your bills to the ERO. This money has to appear from somewhere. Thank you for the question and thank you for the invitation. Indeed, the issue of the grid and grid development is a fundamental part of the energy transition. In our grid development plan that the President of the ERO has accepted earlier this year, we have allocated 60 billion zlotys over the next 7 years until 2034 for our investment. Part of those investments are aimed at evacuating power from renewables, especially wind power in the north and especially offshore wind. We are investing a lot in the transmission grid to be able to distribute energy that is generated in a distributed manner in many places across Poland. We've had a huge change in the energy mix over the past several years. We used to have a stable level of 6 gigawatts in wind. Now we have exceeded 10 gigawatts. Sorry, we've added 22 or 23 gigawatts in PV. And in 2025, we are in a completely different place than just before the pandemic. And that was just a blink of an eye ago. Renewables are reaching 30% of the country's energy demand. And with regard to installed capacity, we are reaching half of total installed capacity, which means that the share of dispatchable sources is decreasing. And the volume of electricity generated by these sources is also decreasing. And there is a natural competition between, let's say, new energy sources, renewables, and conventional energy. They both have different features and they need to be optimally used for the sake of transition. And I do agree with the previous speakers that the pathway, the trajectory we are on in Poland and Europe, it seems that there's no other way. There are other technologies that can generate electricity cheaply, and these technologies will appear on a larger scale in Poland. And this energy will compete with all other sources of energy, and the generators need to take care need to ensure that off-takers want to off-take this energy and pay the relevant price. And we want this price to be as low as possible so that we can compete in the global markets, so that Europe can compete. As for grid connections, at PSE, we try to develop the grid in such a way that we can connect new sources to the grid. And we have in the pipeline, with regard to grid connection conditions, both ourselves and DSOs, we have such a huge pipeline that in 2030, we want to have about 100 gigawatts connected to the grid in renewables, 100 gigawatts in the whole system. And again, let me get to that. The demand is about 20,000+ gigawatts. So why do you keep issuing those grid connection conditions? We issue them because there are investors who are willing to build generation units. And we have a lot of doubts about some of these projects because we see that there are investors who submit applications for 5 identical projects in 5 different locations. And according to the law, we need to issue those grid connection conditions. Whether they will build these projects, whether they will be willing to sign the grid connection agreement and pay the grid connection fee, we do not know that. And we will have a discussion about that in the next panel on the grid law. Well, it doesn't really make sense. You follow the law, you issue the grid connection conditions, there are projects that are not being completed. It can't work. From the point of view of a grid operator who has a sort of supreme role, we have been discussing it for many years. You have great analytics, you have the best experts. You are the ones taking care of our energy security and the security of the grid. Without you, it would have all collapsed. You know every unit in operation and planned. And despite that, the law is deficient. And you are doing something against the system. That is why we want to change the law. We proposed amendments to the UCA 84, that is the grid connection law. We want to streamline the grid connection process to a large extent. Today, the waiting line for investors for grid connection conditions is 7 months long. And there's no guarantee that when we look at these applications that they will be complete. Some of these applications will have to return after several months of supplementation and completion. So we want to amend the law in such a way that our work as an operator should be limited to technical issues only, whether there is a need and space in the grid and what the investments are necessary to connect these units to the grid. We believe that it is not our role to check the local zoning plan, the land registers, and so on. We want these issues to be sorted out elsewhere by other bodies, and then we will be able to award these grid connection conditions much quicker. Will these legislative changes be sufficient to accelerate the transition for the energy mix to go in the desired direction, desired by the TSO? For the energy mix to go in the desired direction, the tools that we have is the capacity market and shaping the market design, the balancing rules. It is something worth highlighting that connecting tens of thousands megawatts of generation units to the system that has a much lower demand than the total capacity of these installed units, some of them will have to work at half capacity. Or not at all. It might mean that business case for such generation units, there's no business case, or they might make more money in those several hours than in other periods of time, and then it would make it the business case viable. So everyone has to understand that the grid, the system, is for off-takers, not just for generators. Generators are part of the system, and the role of the generators is to generate electricity when the off-takers need it. And adapting the generation profiles to off-take is of key importance. Obviously, the off-takers, the demand has to respond to the conditions. For example, negative prices, they should look for possibilities to capitalize on these negative prices. So there is a huge potential in heating, electromobility, electricity storage, shifting electricity from 12 o'clock until 7 p.m. So these are all components of our transition, and we as the operator will take care of the capacity market. We'll have to design the new capacity market from 2031 onwards, and we are working on it. How is the work going on? We need to start the discussions with the European Commission later this year, and we are sort of ready for that. The capacity market without energy storage, we need to have dispatchable units, and energy storage installations have their room in the capacity market. You have seen in the auction that many storage installations have received contracts, but for storage to provide added value to the capacity market and the energy market, there has to be a healthy balance between energy storage and renewables, because if there is too much renewables and too little storage, there would be a risk for renewable generation, so the potential will not be fully utilized. And on the other hand, if there is too much storage compared to renewables, this storage will not be able to get charged. How do you estimate the demand for storage in the short term? I think that the 6,000 megawatts that we have purchased is a great first step. And for the capacities planned for 2028-29, the 6,000 megawatts is quite a lot. If we add more renewables to the system, and we are on the right track to do that, then we will need more storage. If we have more storage, then the generation units will operate in a different way. We will improve the possibility to absorb energy from PV, and we will improve the operating regime for dispatchable units. Perhaps there will be less of them needed. At our latitude, we shouldn't forget that we have the winter season when PV, which is so strongly introduced to the system, it's not there in autumn and winter. There's much less of it. And then there is the great role for wind, which in autumn and winter months operates and generates electricity in a much more efficient way. And it's a great opportunity because the characteristics of operation for PV and wind is completely different. PV works in a similar way every day, and at noon everyone is bleeding. in that sector. And it will be very hard for new projects to be viable in the market without storage. For wind generation, the profile is completely different. Wind generation is much less predictable, but when the wind starts blowing, it keeps on blowing for a longer period of time, for at least a couple of days. Then it stops blowing again. And it's more predictable in the short term and more stable, and it's more reliable with regard to the system. Whereas PV is quite predictable in terms of the profile, daily profile, but we do not know the amplitude. So to summarize my lengthy contribution, the transition is ahead of us, and we need to find the right pathway. And in Europe, we do not have the right answer to what the system should look like, but certainly a healthy mix of PV, wind, storage, and dispatchable units. Let me emphasize that dispatchable units, dispatchable capacities, because we need to be prepared for the bloody Dunkelflaute. It will always happen, and we cannot shut down the country for 2 days because there is no wind. We need to be able to power the country. Perhaps we will need some sources, some kind of units, maybe gas-fired units that will operate for only 1,000 or 500 hours per year, and the rest will be covered by nuclear, PV, wind, and storage. We have touched upon wind power and PV, but sticking to onshore wind, the question to our next speaker, Mr. Piotr Rogusz. Over the past 10 years, we can see that this industry, the onshore industry, was not developing as expected or as desired due to the so-called Distance Act. We know that the minimum distance between wind turbines and residential housing has increased from 500 to 700 meters. What has to happen for this industry to get a kickstart?
Good morning. Thank you for the question. Before I start answering, Prime Minister praised Tauron for its stock price. I checked CAC around where it's listed, where we are listed. In the last 5 years, where we have accelerated investing in renewables, 4 to 5 gigawatts of additional installed capacity in renewables across the world. We operate in over 30 countries on 6 continents. And the stock price is 90% higher. So at least here, we are two tangible pieces of evidence that energy transition makes sense economically and is expected by investors. I mean, sorry for the side remark. It's true, obviously. Onshore wind had been blocked for many years. Here in Poland, we are also another tangible example that we had to limit our operation in this respect. Obviously, onshore wind has an important role to play, just like Prime Minister said. Obviously, energy independence and energy security is of prime importance, undoubtedly. During the last 5 years, I've checked that Poland imports between 13 and 20 million tons of coal a year. A large part of it is used for energy generation. It's not a great sin to import anything, but it's 4.5 to 5.5 billion zlotys. If you were to spend this on investing in renewables, onshore, etc., we're talking about 500 megawatts of wind a year, 1.2, 1.5 terawatt hours during the next 20 or 30 years. So this shows how significant onshore wind is. LCOE, it's one of the most affordable technologies and economically viable and predictable in the long term. It stabilizes market prices in Europe and in the world. We see where there's a high saturation of renewables, it drops. What's the price of the megawatt of wind, onshore wind? I mean, it's a very sensitive question. I mean, in your project, on average, you know, we understand very well that LCOE is a cost that takes into account the equity cost and variable technical costs. The technical costs are low. they are not low. 30 to maximum 50% of the variable cost of coal, but in the long term, it lowers the energy cost for the economy and for customers, for sure. So this is important from this point of view. Also, what is very important, as far as we are talking about advantages of offshore, that large units don't have, is generating the benefit for local communities, communes, municipalities. It's a municipal industry, so to speak, where we are, let's say, distributed or spread across the country. This generates taxes, jobs locally, and supports local communities as far as culture is concerned, etc. I think this is also very important. Returning to the crux of your question, I cannot give you a spectacular answer. The arguments we've heard so many times, both today and yesterday, the main thing is that what we need is stability and predictability of the legal framework. This is a sine qua non. We need all this to safely plan our investment long term. We don't need any more reforms, do you think? Yesterday somebody said about the long straight ahead for 4 terms of office to reach the successful end of the energy transition. So reforms are fine, provided they support development, not to make without making a U-turn here in our approach. So we've seen such examples. So the Age Distance Act. Obviously, 500 meters was accepted. The conditions have changed a bit in the last week, but I think we'll be able to accelerate even with 700 meters, provided all the rest is simplified. All the issues related to environmental limitations and plans. Returning to the issue you raised, the social awareness. It's a bit of an issue. Some people are saying simply that they want to live next to a wind turbine. There's this NIMBYism. This is our role of developers, including PWA, to raise the awareness and to dispel the myths. Because in the last few months and years, we've seen so many myths. Truth is on our side, and facts and figures are on our side, and this should not be difficult. Returning to other issues, I mentioned the stability of the legal provisions. What is even more important is simplicity and transparency of procedures. What we've been facing as the wind industry, but not only wind industry, we are also investing in other sources. Unfortunately, in Poland, the permitting process takes 7 to 8 years, based on our experience and feedback from our developers. So this is much too long. It makes no sense. We need to find a solution to streamline all this. I know that some things are happening, we have some ideas, but we have to finally turn plans into action, because 7 years is indefensible. When we're talking about permitting, there is OPRO, the so-called areas of accelerated renewables development, and we are strongly hoping that this will work well in Poland, and this will cover a large swath of the country to give momentum for our development. At the same time, let me mention an issue which has not been worked on, the use of degraded and post-industrial areas. I've read a number of analyses, PWA, 500 to 600,000 hectare. It shows that the permitting process sometimes it's much more difficult in this area than on a normal rural area, because there are some additional requirements, like testing the soil pollution, etc. these issues should also be streamlined, structured, and connected with these areas of accelerated development. Revenue is of prime importance for investors. It's all about the prospects of long-term stable revenue. Whenever we can, we use market opportunities, using PPAs, structuring our products on the stock exchange. It does not allow us to secure positions for more than 2 or 3 years. So we've been working with the commodity exchange on that, but it's not working yet. I mean, us and other investors could be attracted and persuaded to take action. Providing a longer term for CFD auctions. In 2 years, in 2027, the current auction will end. It's high time to show the next perspective for 5 or 10 years. This will be an important component attracting investors and investment. Konrad also mentioned auctions, capacity auctions. I'm of the opinion that if we have dedicated capacity market auctions are dedicated to BES, this would be a huge incentive for the development of this area that we all need. Current solutions foresee this, but we know that this carries a large risk of 15 hours versus, this is something that should be discussed with the European Commission at the end of the day, whether we have baskets of technologies or whether we have technology neutral auctions as it is today. This is something that should be discussed with the European Commission. We wanted to launch the capacity market, and when we notified this, we very much wanted to have separate technological baskets, but this was impossible. The European Commission decided that it has to be technology neutral. After 10 years, we have collected a lot of experience. We are one of the first capacity markets in Europe. We have amassed all this experience, and in the debates in the fall of this year, we will do our best to convince the Commission to have these baskets. It works both ways. I remember the time when the Law and Justice ruled, they wanted to put it in a technology basket without any auctions. So it works both ways. When the government is against you, it's okay, but it's important to build solutions providing us this long straight. They should not be too emotional or irritating to any of the political sides. We do not have much influence on politics. For us as the business, what we want is the stability of regulations and predictability in time. And this is the main thing here. So it was so nice to hear from Konrad about all the capacity which will be available. This is great news. If it's really true, this will somehow contribute to providing this long straight. But here and now, the facts are that those who generate energy from wind farms and wind see that we are unable to fully utilize the generation capacity. Last year, the capacity reduction or curtailment, non-market generated by operators, amounted to 700 gigawatt hours, close to 600 for PV, 100 gigawatts for wind. This year I checked this after 5 months. For PV, we already have 500, and for wind, we have 100. So if we maintain this trajectory, we'll be at the level of 1.2, 1.5 terawatt hours of free, so to speak, electricity. Anyway, it's not generating variable costs, direct variable costs, which was not utilized, which was not generated, and it was replaced by coal-based generation. Obviously, we need this. Coal stabilizes the system, etc. It's not really, but these are millions of zlotys that we will not make based on the investment we made a few years ago. If I can react quickly, this is really true that energy does not always fit within the system. Sometimes there's too much of it. I have just said quickly that we have issued so many connection conditions that we can connect 100 gigawatts of renewables to the system. In the grid that has 28, let's say, for peak demand, let's imagine we will have 35. Are you convinced that 100 gigawatts can always generate electricity, that we will always have to offtake this energy? I mean, I would put it this way: we have to learn how to serve the demand of our users. They don't need so much energy at 12 o'clock. I mean, if we have demand from heating systems and electromobility, it will be okay. They see this demand at 11. I mean, at 7, sorry. I mean, generate energy at 7 o'clock from sun in our time zone, because this is when the prices are high. I mean, obviously, the more capacity we have, the more often it will have to be curtailed and work below its potential. But this may be all right. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that. We have so much capacity, we will not serve the peaks, but apart from the peaks, I mean, there will be some other times.
General, I do agree with what the gentleman from PSE has said, but I cannot support what he's saying because he didn't use a single word. Hydrogen. Hydrogen. 20 years ago, the efficiency of transition from green energy to green hydrogen and back to green energy was at the level of 15 to 20%, like the steam engine. Today it's 35–40%, the whole process. It's like a good power plant. And they say that in several years from now, the efficiency will be about 50%, as on par with the most efficient conventional unit in Bełchatów. It has 46–47%. In 10 years from now, it can be 60+%. So if we are able to shift to green hydrogen, we will use part of that hydrogen directly in energy-intensive industries. But some of it will be reconverted into electricity, and we can have the efficiency of about 70–80%, like in good engines. So this is our future. Mr. Ryszard Pawlik, who helped me introduce the first hydrogen law, one of the first hydrogen laws 2 or 3 years ago. Poland is one of the best in gray or black hydrogen, but we might be the best in green hydrogen in the future. We do. The best storage is hydrogen. Okay, I'll stop talking. I will shut up. I would like to defend the gentleman from PSE, because they are TSOs. As a TSO, they are looking at right here, right now. And we are talking about, or you are talking about, technologies of the future. 5 or 10 years from now, Konrad is taking care of having power in everyone's socket right here, right now, every day, 24/7. So the hydrogen laws introduced in Europe did not translate into legislation in Poland necessarily. We keep our eyes on it, and we want to encourage politicians to have support schemes. I don't know if you attended the presentation of West Pomerania. There is an enormous project, 1,000 megawatts, using wind and PV to produce green hydrogen, 1 or 2 electrolyzers. And we support this project together with Marshal Geblewicz because it is a European-level project. but I can see how many problems appear when developing this project. Military zones, permits. It all takes time. I read it between the lines in what the gentleman from PSE has said, that cheap is the thing of the past. There will be certain obligations on the stakeholders in the energy system. That's the way I understand it. We will have to adapt to that, and we will have to demonstrate that we are full-fledged participants of the energy mix. I did not expect my argument about grid capacity and would cause such a heated discussion, but that's great. There's one important thing worth mentioning. That is repowering. We have about 10 gigawatts installed capacity in the system. 7, 8 gigawatts installed up to 2015 are 2-3 megawatt turbines. After the 10H period, the technology, or during that period, the technology has advanced, and we have 4 or 5 megawatt turbines. Would you make such a decision? Talking about lifetime, it would be project or turbine specific. But according to our assessment and experiences from elsewhere in the world, turbines that are, let's say, 15, 20 years old are turbines that where repowering could be applied. So we could have, if we have the possibility of repowering and increasing the capacity on the same connection point by replacing 2 megawatt turbines with 5 megawatt turbines, it would be the most natural and the most obvious, in my opinion, the cheapest way to provide a boost for development of wind power. We are focusing on the energy transition because it is of key importance to be able to talk about safe and secure Europe and Poland. But it's hard to talk about transition without investments in modern and reliable generation units. We were talking about onshore wind farms, but in fact, the offshore wind is of key importance. So the next question goes to Agata. Agata Staniewska-Bolesta from Ørsted. The question about the projects that are under construction, because the Baltic Power project will start very soon, providing energy, but we also have information about Baltica 2, which is a project that is also very advanced. So what will be the benefits of these projects? Only benefits, if I'm supposed to be brief. But before we start talking about benefits, let me get back to the background that the Prime Minister has mentioned. It is also important. And this background, this backdrop is Europe. Europe that is going through geopolitical turbulence. And we are so divided, also here in Poland. But in this turbulent Europe, there are things that we have in common. We have common denominators, and it has been discussed here. For me, one common prospect and perspective that we have in Europe is that we have a problem with competitiveness of our economy in Europe. We want to have a better, we want our economy to be in better shape, and we also have the issues of security that have been mentioned multiple times over the past 2 days. And at the heart of it is energy, like the Prime Minister has said. So regardless of our policies, regardless of our modern energy systems, where the TSOs will be extremely important. But it's not just about having electricity in our sockets, in our households today, but how to think ahead, how to build our resilience and how to improve our energy security, how to build the a puzzle from these pieces. It is a huge from these pieces because it is a huge challenge for the operator, but there's no other way because if we want to ensure security. And offshore wind is an important piece of that puzzle, and it brings benefits. It is a stable. Out of all those weather-dependent technologies, offshore wind is relatively stable. It provides a huge volume of energy, and it is an important component of our energy independence and our energy security. And even if we look at some conservative studies, it turns out that in 2040 or 2050 in Europe, we should have 20 or 25% from offshore, of energy from offshore. And we are in a difficult moment in our industry, but despite that, European countries perceive this technology as that technology that will improve the security and competitiveness. So now let me move to what is happening in Poland. We are building 4.1 gigawatts. We are building our Baltica 2 wind farm with PGE with 1.5 gigawatt capacity. But I would like to say that it is a great achievement that in those difficult circumstances around us, we are building 4.1 gigawatts. It is the largest capacity in offshore wind under construction in Europe right now. So let's remember what we managed to achieve. And we are doing it because we have good foundations for that, good fundamentals. And it is a great value of these projects. These projects are under construction. They are under development. It's not just about, we are not just talking about them and telling you what will happen in the future. These are projects that are currently being developed. And with regard to the generation gap, that is behind our corner, and it can surprise us in the next decade, it is a part of a potential solution for the problems that will appear in our system on our trajectory towards complete transformation and complete transition. And it is an important part of becoming independent of imported fuels. It was mentioned before, and we have some calculations. If offshore wind was developed in Europe at a stable pace of about 10 gigawatts per year, every year over the next 10 years, we are able to save 70 billion euros in Europe by not spending this money on gas or coal. And we will not be exposed to price peaks caused by purchasing these fuels, and we experienced that very painfully when the war started in Ukraine. So we need, at the back of our minds, in the current reality, these are the things that we should think about, and our technologies respond very well to these risks. And the last component I would like to mention here is decreasing energy prices. We are talking a lot with PSE about the level of support that should be there for offshore wind. This level of support is not directly translated into price impulse. We know how the pricing mechanism is designed, it's merit order. And the more technologies with low operational costs we have, the price stimulus, the price impulse, the stronger it will be for our off-takers. And it's not a matter of tomorrow. There's a number of investments that have to be carried out, but there's no other way. So we should think about, we should talk about lower energy prices that it provides in the short and long term and mid-term. And offshore wind, there is also one thing that is also oftenly discussed, that is local content, especially for offshore wind. How we, with our investment projects, are becoming a catalyst for other investments in local economies. How we help our companies get ready for the global market. We are not only local, we although we create jobs in Pomerania and we are perceived as an important, as a strong catalyst, but by preparing Polish companies to become part of the offshore wind supply chain in a competitive way, we give them an opportunity to also enter international markets. So that is why offshore wind is a good solution, because it provides better security, energy independence, it provides an economic stimulus, and it is a catalyst to reduce energy prices. Almost exactly like onshore. I do not see offshore wind competing with onshore wind. I think these technologies are complementary. We have distributed generation like projects that ENGIE is developing in Poland. Offshore wind farms will certainly be more needed from the point of view of the entire electricity system, and there's a great role for the TSO, for PSE, to play. And I think that eventually we will provide green electricity to our industries in the south, in Silesia. I can see that gentlemen here represent the south of Poland. Let me just add, because I forgot to mention that, ENGIE is also involved in offshore wind through our JV with EDP, that is Ocean Winds. We have our project, BC Wind. It was also mentioned a couple of times yesterday. So there is no competition here. It is a complementary activity, and we are active in the offshore wind sector as well. We also have 40% share in offshore. Well, just as a reminder, we'll talk about competition a bit later. I would also like to have 40% stake in offshore wind. I'm very happy that I can be part of this great story of offshore wind. This birth of this sector was very painful. It required us to be very determined, and I'm very happy to see that these projects are being implemented, that they are under construction, and it is a great story. Just two more sentences about the impact that we have on the economy. Because I have an impression that we all often have to explain that we need to have more contracts, more local content. This is happening. When implementing phase 1 of offshore wind, 11,000 people are already working in this, 3,000 new jobs out of those 11,000. And it's just the beginning of the journey. It is a whole process, so instead of being defensive, we should raise our heads and be proud about that. It isn't the energy transition, but it is also an economic transition. Yes, the video that we presented at the opening of the conference yesterday, it shows how much was created and done thanks to offshore wind. Like the O&M base in Łeba, which is fully operational. I had an opportunity to talk to your O&M people about their daily jobs. They already perform maintenance of buoys and other equipment. The vessels are going out to sea every day. It is already happening. So it is a clear signal showing that thanks to partners, international partners that we implement these projects with, like Northland Power and Ørsted, this dream is coming true in Poland. So the next question goes to you, Dominik, because we are implementing phase 1 of offshore wind. It is under construction already. Baltic Power is a consortium of Orlen and Northland Power, and you received the award yesterday for your project that is already under construction. And I hope that we will soon travel with the Prime Minister to take a selfie on the first offshore wind turbine here in Poland, because it will be a sign to the whole of Europe that we are getting on this train, that we are joining this group of the best. and offshore wind will help us. Northland Power is not an obvious company. It is a Canadian company, so why did you decide to implement your project here in Poland with our champion?
Thank you very much, and to extend the invitation, you're very welcome to Baltic Power when we're fully operational. I hope you'll be able to join us. So, well, firstly, thank you for having me on this panel. So Northland is, as you say, it's a Canadian company. We've been going about 35 years. We develop all sorts of clean energy technology. We've been developing across 10 countries, across 4 continents, and we've invested about $15 billion over that time. And I would say across all of the countries and jurisdictions that we work, we look for the same fundamental things everywhere we go. The first thing has got to be market fundamentals and the regulatory regime behind that. And I have to say that, we see that very, very strongly here in Poland. Poland has become an economic powerhouse of Europe. I mean, the transformation of this country in my lifetime has been astronomical, and I think everyone in this room should be incredibly proud of what this country has achieved. But it's also got an incredibly tough journey, as we've heard, in terms of decarbonisation. So that fundamental imperative to decarbonise is one of the things that we look for in this country. But also we look for the track record of how Poland has implemented this change over the last few years. And I think it's very easy to get bogged down in little, technical aspects such as, we're talking about capacity markets and things like that. But actually what Poland has demonstrated over the last sort of 5-6 years of implementing offshore wind in this country has been incredible. It's one of the only countries which implemented an offshore wind sector deal. And I come from the United Kingdom, and we did this too, and it has been so significant in terms of bringing together all stakeholders to ensure that there's an aligned vision, because ultimately that's what you need. What we're trying to deliver here is a complete transformation of our energy system, and that is not something, also to the point that was made about, we're talking about a project which we're all doing, which will last 50 years. And that will outlast most of us in this room, and it will outlast different political sides. This is something that actually you need to have stability, and again, that is something that Poland has shown in respect of offshore wind over the years. But we also, of course, look for the right partners to work with. Every single offshore wind project that we have around the world is developed in partnership. And you used the phrase national champion in Orlen, and I couldn't agree more. We're very proud of that partnership, and we're aware that obviously all of the other offshore wind projects have extremely strong partnerships as well. So our ability to share knowledge in what we have done over the 35 years of experience that we've had, developing, we've got 3 other operational projects and another one as well in construction, as well as Baltic Power. But we also look for diversification. Any business requires diversification in order to get resilience, and that is in a number of different ways. So it's diversification in terms of regulatory regimes. It's also geographical diversification. We have wind farms in the Netherlands, in Germany, and we're also developing in Taiwan. One of the things about wind is it's not always windy, but it's usually windy somewhere. So if you're geographically diverse, that's very helpful. And again, I think the fact that most of the offshore wind growth in Europe has been in the North Sea, it gives the Baltic Sea a strong opportunity to be able to grow that. But also technological diversity. Again, we've heard a lot about the importance about flexibility, about how the growth in offshore wind is going to cause, it will give more intermittency, and that will give opportunities for flexible generations such as flexible gas and battery storage. And again, those are technologies that we've got 30 years, in terms of gas operational experience in Canada, and we just completed Canada's largest energy storage facility. So again, these are areas where we hope to participate in the future in Poland as well.
Dziękujemy bardzo.
Thank you so much. I've just talked about competitiveness, that we will talk about competition when you said that you do not compete with each other. Now the question to Prime Minister, who for many years had worked in the European Parliament in the Committee for Industry, Scientific Research and Energy, you were a strong proponent of using this energy transition we need so much to develop European industry. Is this true that after years of debate, of work, have you managed to develop tools allowing European industry to be competitive in comparison to Asian industry, to allow us to compete with them? Thank you so much for this question. I've used the phrase that we're talking about energy transition because this is about safe Europe and safe energy. Yes, that's true. This is the foundation of our security. When we talk about the responsibility of Poland heading the European Council, we have a huge impact on many decisions and actions. Obviously, this impact translates, in a sense, directly into the functioning of an institution that the president of PSE represents, because the PSE has changed a lot in recent months and years. And you headed in the direction that determines the energy transition. This is a paramount task, and you're on this course. I agree with everything you said. I concur. Let me add this. In the European Parliament, we've been trying. I'm not doing this on an everyday basis. Last year, I did work in the European Parliament, and we're trying to prepare all the legal documents allowing us to change the main slogan of the Green Deal to a slogan which is more European citizen-friendly. It's extremely important because if you think about this well, we all know how much we benefited from our presence in the EU, but the EU can be used as a scarecrow, as it happens in many fake news, in irresponsible groups. The result is completely different from the truth. I will not be mentioning how much we gained from our joining the EU, but we have to remember that we have lost a lot, because in some issues we are far behind other EU member states. In 2007, almost 20 years ago, there was the slogan 3 times 15, 3 times 20. I don't recall it correctly, it was so long time ago. 3 times 20, I think. 20% less energy use, 20% more renewables. It was a nice slogan, and the Poland supported that 18 years ago. Am I counting it right? Yes, 18 years ago. And until this day, we have not built even a part of nuclear power plants, even though we've been talking about this for 18 years now. These 18 years show how much late we are. 2007 was the German presidency, Angela Merkel, and we subscribed to that. Please check who ruled then. For that to be clear, because the representatives of this same community today are saying that they have not heard anything about the Green Deal and green transition. Please check that. You cannot remember that, obviously. Who ruled then? I'm telling this because this is all in the hands of PSE somehow. I know that the news that we should work on hydrogen might not have reached Poland in such a strong context, but today operators governing safe delivery of natural gas in Europe are changed into hydrogen network operators. This will happen in the next 2 or 3 years. This will be a paramount shift. We will still be using natural gas as a transitional fuel, and I'm defending it a lot, like in heating. But Tauron is throwing the gauntlet that something can be done here. I'd like to congratulate Tauron on that. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot be late with hydrogen, because these operators today are preparing across Europe for that. I mean, you're saying, you're asking reasonably what Europe is doing to prepare us. I don't want to talk about omnibus. This is the result of detailed studies and analyses aimed at raising the rate of economic development in Europe. I would not like to mention the Clean Industry Act. Let's remember that nitrogen-based industry or steel industry, I mean, nothing will work without them. They will not develop in a green, sustainable manner in the future without hydrogen, because they not only need hydrogen as an element, as a chemical element for the reduction of iron oxides. This cannot be replaced by hydrogen. Coke today is like a saint, and we should be using that. But we will have to add green electricity to that. This is a huge shift. Obviously, when we manufacture fertilizer, we need hydrogen. Fortunately, we do not need electricity. When we are making cement, we cannot do without carbon capture and storage in some way or other underground. So this is the only industry, that's the cement industry. In the other way, we can manage with hydrogen and green energy. And this presents a huge challenge to PSE. That's why I'm supporting what you're saying so much, because you're in this dramatic network of interdependence. I've talked about this a dozen or so years ago. Not so far ago, on the Volyn island in Grodno, there was a meeting on agriculture. And we talked about renewable energy sector. In many countries, there are 3 stages of renewables. First, it's professional. I mean, the professional energy sector does not look at the renewables. They see it as something small, which does not matter. After that, professional coal-based, natural gas and oil-based, professional energy sector and nuclear power at the same are saying, all right, you're an obstacle. You're entering the market. You're taking away our leeway. And the large conventional energy sector is angry. And then there's a third stage when they both start working with each other. And this is a huge task for a PSE. And we have to use this and to provide momentum. The European Union is sending a strong signal. And the message is that Poland needs to focus on hydrogen. And this is my obligation since I left the European Parliament. It's my obligation to discuss this, because in Germany, France, in many countries, this is already being built and developed quickly. And we have to do our best not to be late. Yes, these facilities are being built. Together with our decision makers, I visited these facilities during our study visits, and they are incredible. The question to Grzegorz Lot from Tauron, from the point of view of Asian competition and Asian products. Now, how can they impact the rate of energy transition? If we see some barriers and obstacles for this technology, You've already been implementing this in the EU. Soon, Poland will be implementing this next year. What can the rate be? Now, talking about the rate, we have 20 minutes left. There are 5 people. Everybody can speak for no more than 2 minutes, so please make sure that we do not run out of time and we can all have lunch on time. I mean, who knows, really, to be honest? Have the results of the tender for AMI meters, the difference between European and Chinese meters is threefold. We have to pay 3 times more for local content, theoretically. And the local content has many Chinese components, by the way, inside. And that's the current situation. On the one hand, we have Chinese cars, and they are highly rated. I don't have a Chinese car, by the way. I mean, the consumers decide at the end of the day. And on the other hand, I have Tesla. And then we have a never-ending story with our own car. I'm not sure whether it will survive. I'm 53. I'm not sure whether our Polish electric car will be finally made or not. So we should not go ahead ourselves. We have 5 million meters to be replaced. Are we ready today in Europe and in Poland to satisfy the demand for such solutions with our own technologies? We're talking about this because we had the time for that. If Europe has to replace these meters, AMI, they should build a whole business model and infrastructure to achieve this. On the roofs, we have 1.5 million PV facilities. Most of them are not ready to collaborate with energy storage facilities, etc. We have started this up without preparing the local content. There's one thing to do it here and now, because at the end of the day, electricity price and distribution services need to be affordable. We all want this. This is one thing. Here and now, we have to take action, but we have to think in the long term. If you want to put some limits, you have to be ready that there is competition and there is the supply of products and technologies which will replace what's happening around the world. That's my point of view. It's unacceptable to cause a situation with some crazy legislative ideas, we will increase energy prices. What we're doing here, we're changing conventional energy into renewables. The energy prices are getting lower year on year. That's absolutely happening. We can see what's happening, and that's it. Now, when we look at the energy bill, is it low or not? Because more and more components are added as all kinds of fees and support schemes, etc. We've raised it a number of times, and the support scheme has to be implemented. So we, in a way, present these things. 40% on your distributed bill is the cost transferred from PSE, all kinds of support scheme. Every new support scheme, soon we will have energy storage operating for a long time. Then we have a support scheme for local content. Peakers. Without peakers, I mean gas engines stabilizing the system, it will not be possible to switch to renewables. And the thing is that if at the end of the day you want to have energy transition at reasonable prices, we need to think what's going to happen next year in 2 years' time, not only what's going to happen in 15 years' time. Thank you. So the order is random of questions. The next question goes to Agata Staniewska-Boleska. We're talking about energy transition can have an impact on the local economy. The offshore sector, due to its huge capital intensity, is perceived as a huge driver, driving the local economy. How global entities present on many markets engage local entities. I've mentioned that somehow. So the first phase of offshore is being finalized, is being built. What follows with that is not only construction of these wind farms, but also these economic impulse or signal. We are developing installation infrastructure yesterday Orlen announced the opening of the Świnoujście terminal. An installation terminal is being built in Gdańsk after the Baltica 2 contract was signed for the installation from Gdańsk. There's a whole range of actions to prepare it for operational stage, O&M centers. You mentioned WEBA, and we will be building it with PG from Ustka. There's another center in Władysławowo, creating more and more jobs, transferring skills to the local employees, preparing them to operate our wind farms. But there's a whole list of investment projects in factories already happening. I already mentioned that. We already have 3,000 jobs generated directly by our phase 1 projects. Just off the cuff, these 3 factories, 2 here, 1 Vestas, second Windar, and the 3rd Baltic Towers in Gdańsk. In these factories, we have around 1,000 jobs created. How we are preparing the supply chain? Well, our role as investors should be and is, and we involve in this, is to ensure the dialogue with our supply chain, how they should prepare for the whole purchasing process. Our industry operates in difficult conditions. We develop our projects a few dozen kilometers from the seashore. We have very high health and safety standards. These projects will be functioning in these difficult weather conditions for decades to come. That's why we have very high quality standards. And understanding all this, that this is a completely new industry functioning differently, has a different system. So when you have suppliers, many things are solved in the form of transparent dialogue. So there's a whole range of new issues done differently. And understanding how it all functions, how it all works, is the most important requirement to enter this market and to develop your competitive position, not only in the Polish, but also in the global offshore market. Thank you so much for your reply. Huge investment in offshore wind farms, and also huge investment in onshore energy. The level is similar. This gives a huge development potential for the Polish economy. How to use this opportunity? Do developers have a role to play? Piotr, the question is to you. We've all agreed that the potential is enormous. It's been blocked for many years. Now we have this huge opportunity to unlock it, this potential, for it to be untapped. This 10H Act decreased the area from 7 to 8% of the country to 0.2%. It killed the business. I'm talking about the area where you could build onshore farms. Now, when we set the distance at 500 meters at the minimal distance, the potential is around 40 gigawatts, more or less. With the current 700 meters, this would be around 20 gigawatts. So, any way you cut it, this is a huge potential. Obviously, assuming that the grid is developed and reinforced, and we see a strong dynamic development of the network, building the merit order, also building flexible units. Without flexible units and high-capacity grid, the green transition will fail. So these are the fundamentals. How to do that? The answer is similar to my previous address. We need to ensure stability and continuity of investment. So the long straight that will allow investors to invest safely, to have prospects of building factories, employing people. Personally, I don't see a need of any special dedicated projects aimed at supporting the local content. Additionally, obviously, we are open to that. I'm sure the potential is there. As PWEI, we, together with the companies in offshore wind, we drafted a roadmap and industrial policy how to better use the share of Polish entrepreneurs, how to attract more foreign investment to Poland and to create new jobs. At the same time, we also accept the challenge for onshore wind. So we are working on such a study. We will prepare it for our government this year, and we'll do our best for this to be implemented. Another important component we should not be forgetting is the building skills and the know-how of our people. This is one of the foundations, especially if you want to accelerate, both at the top-down structured level, having dedicated courses of studies at technical universities and in technical high schools to create these educational paths. Another important component, for sure, are systems of training and reskilling. Some of us are from Silesia. Silesia has a long technical tradition and track record, giving it a huge potential for reskilling and redirecting these skills to renewables. And it's already happening in many companies, in subcontractors and servicing companies. There are people that used to work in thermal energy or power industry or in mining. Obviously, this could be accelerated, and what's very important is it's bilateral. It works both ways between universities and the business. We collaborate with the Silesian University of Technology. I mean, 50% of our employees graduated from this university. And with the Warsaw University of Technology, it's not only about finding employees, but also collaborating in these small tweaks or innovations that can help us solve some issues. On the other hand, help universities find new knowledge and do some research they wouldn't be able to in normal conditions. So I do encourage you to do so and to follow suit to untap the potential that you've mentioned.
Back to offshore wind. Northland Power is engaged not only in offshore wind projects, you're also involved in onshore wind projects, energy storage and PV. But in some markets, we see a slowdown in offshore wind farm construction. Will it be different in Poland? Do we need something more, something else to effectively develop offshore wind projects? The question goes to Dominik.
So I'll rather repeat what I said at the outset for that. I think offshore wind is a long process. Start to finish, you're talking at least 6, 7, 8 years. The most important thing is continuity of regulation and continuity of the process around that. I think one of the things that has been really important for the Polish offshore industry is, as Agata from Orsted mentioned, has been the development of skills here in country. I had the pleasure of going to Vestas's new nacelle factory at Szczecin on Monday, and I was incredibly impressed that firstly at the speed and the scale at which that has been developed. This is being developed, this is being operated, 100% by a Polish labour force. And actually, it's exceeding our expectations. When we first contracted the Baltic Power project, we were hoping that maybe 1 or 2 of the nacelles could come from that factory as opposed to from Denmark. I can't say an exact number, but I can say it will be materially more than that will now be installed in that first project that will have been manufactured in Szczecin. So, and as well as that, we see the development of, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers across the industry, and I think it's that continuity and just don't stop, keep going. We were delighted to see the announcement of the auctions this December. Again, I think it's very, very simple. Our message to government is quite simply, say what you're going to do and then do what you said you were going to do. And then I think the industry will succeed very well.
What about the second part of the question, the technologies, onshore wind, batteries?
So, look, Northland, we don't believe in investing in projects. We believe in investing in markets. So onshore wind, battery storage, solar. It's very clear from this discussion that there is a huge opportunity. It's also very clear we've got some strong competitors in these areas as well. But we've got a lot of experience in developing these over many years. And as I say, we see Poland as the key growth platform for our operations in Central Europe. So we're delighted to be here. And again, we plan to be here for many years to come.
Very good news. Thank you very much. Proszę Państwa, bardzo dziękuję za merytoryczną dyskusję.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for very concise and very expert discussion. And I would like to ask the Prime Minister to summarize the discussion. There were two questions to the gentleman from PSE. Well, many of us have addressed, I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. Yes, we will also ask Konrad to provide a summary of the discussion. My apologies for looking towards the gentleman from PSE. Well, thank you very much, Prime Minister. The pathway of transition is quite clear, and this panel confirms that clearly. We are heading towards high penetration of renewables. We are aiming at controlling the variability using market mechanisms that we want to implement to be effective and efficient. But to maximize the use of these renewables, we need to use this energy from renewables. We need to consume it when it's generated the most, in largest volumes. And this was mentioned by the Prime Minister. We need to find a way to consume this energy when we have maximum generation from wind and PV. And here we have technologies like battery storage, electrolyzers, or green hydrogen, green ammonia, and other possible molecules. We need these gases because, again, in order to move further, let's remember that we have some fourth states like must-runs, that is units that provide services like inertia, capacity or power adjustment, short circuit power. We need them for the stable to run in a stable way. If there is a shortage of that, we saw events like in the Iberian Peninsula blackout. So we will certainly move in a direction to be able to have these ancillary services from other units, more flexible units that can better adapt to the operation of renewables. Those are the gas-fired units that will use natural gas or green gas. And again, while decarbonizing, we would like to look for green gas. But on the other hand, we need to look for ancillary services also from renewables.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Because with great power comes great responsibility. Today, renewables are 30%, soon it will be 50%, soon thereafter it will be majority of the capacity, and we will need these renewables to perform grid-forming services. And one last thing I would like to mention is looking for demand among ordinary off-takers, users, consumers, those who want to consume energy when it's cheap. So the price signals have to get through to these consumers. So the energy prices on the wholesale market, but that's not only this. We have the capacity fee, transmission fee, distribution fee, renewable fee, capacity market fee, and so on. We need to try to minimize these fees and not to have excess fees. So if we want to think about developing more renewables, the cheapest technology
to ja nie wiem, czy dobrym rozwiązaniem jest szukać...
As it was mentioned here, I don't know if it's a good solution to look for support schemes. Because if we are talking about cheapest technologies,
Jest jej bardzo dużo i szukamy...
there's a lot of it, and we are looking for demand for this technology,
To myślmy też o tym, żeby
but we should also think about
na zasadach rynkowych.
operating according to market principles, doing it according to market principles. Because in today's liberalized market, market principles should determine who generates and who consumes and when they do that. Well, I have to respond to the last statement, because the capacity market, without the capacity market, without support for the capacity market would not work. We know that it's necessary. That is clear. But what do we purchase on the capacity market? We purchase reliability or security of supply when consumers need it. And everyone should provide this capability. We will purchase it from anyone. It has to be provided. It has to be delivered. On a positive note, at ENGIE we are working on performing ancillary services to the possible extent from our units. Will we do it next year? Well, great. We are hoping to see that. We count on this. Thank you very much for this panel. As you've heard, the renewables industry has a lot to offer, but we have to be able to use it in an efficient and smart way. Thank you.
Zapraszamy na lunch, zapraszamy na kolejne sesje, bardzo ciekawe.
See you at the upcoming sessions. We will discuss those interesting topics during the upcoming.